Let's discuss the competency of market interpretation a little further. We've already discussed the concepts of segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Now that we know the market segments, what would be a good target, and how we'd like to position our product, let's discuss the concept of marketing strategy a little more. First of all, as a review, remember that market share is the ratio of individual or company brand sales to industry-wide sales. Previously, we looked at the entire cigarette market and looked at the demand for specific brands, that being selective demand, and we calculated a market share, the ratio of individual sales to industry-wide sales of a particular product category. So let's move on to the concept of marketing strategies. And one of the beginning concepts is to establish what your marketing objectives are. So my question for you is, would it be a good marketing objective to perhaps increase market share? Of course it would. Even in times of poor economy or increased competition, your marketing objective might be to maintain market share. What about the concept of increasing your sales, either in terms of the number of units you sell or in terms of your overall sales revenue? Would that be a good marketing objective? Yes, of course it would. What about the concept of increasing profits? Would that be a good marketing objective? Yes, it would. And of course, there are other marketing objectives too. But my question for you now is, if you were a marketer, which of these three, market share, sales, or profitability, would you least want to be held accountable for? I think all three are very valid, but let me illustrate why you might be less interested in being held accountable for profitability than for sales or market share. Remember, your profit from sales is equal to your total sales revenue, which comes from the number of units you sell times your price. Now, the marketers help to determine the price. That's one of the elements of the marketing mix. When you do marketing research, you find out how price sensitive your potential consumers are at different prices, and you decide what the best price for your product would be in the marketplace. Also, you make product, distribution, and promotion decisions. So while you can't control the amount sold, the marketer, above any other person within a business organization, helps determine the amount sold more than anyone else. So if the marketer has, because of the decisions they make, the most influence on how many units sold and on the price, it seems to me like it would be fair for them to be held accountable for sales, either in terms of units sold or sales revenue, total sales revenue. But back to this concept of not being held accountable for profits. Where do profits come from? Well, we've already indicated that they come from sales revenue minus total expenses. So what are your expenses? Obviously, there are a lot of marketing expenses, but there are also a lot of other expenses associated with a business that marketers have no control over. What about production costs or lease negotiations? What about overtime expenses or the cost of some of the raw materials that you buy? Other departments within an organization have more control over those than do marketers. So if I were a marketer, while it makes sense for me to be held accountable for profit because I have large input into profit, because I have some influence on the units sold, the price, and marketing expenses. I would rather be held accountable for sales or market share than profit because I don't have control over a big aspect of our expenses being non-marketing expenses. Obviously, all three of these are appropriate marketing objectives because the whole reason we market is to make a profit, unless, of course, you're in a not-for-profit organization, which still practices marketing. So, in conclusion, all three of these are appropriate marketing objectives. If I had my choice, I would rather be held accountable for market share or sales than profit, though. So let's move on and talk a little bit more about writing marketing objectives. Marketing objectives must be measurable. So if you're a marketing manager and they say, we want your objective is for you to be a great marketer, well, that's not measurable. What does it mean to be a great marketer? Is it to increase sales, increase profit, increase market share? All three of those are measurable. But in addition, they must be specific. So if they tell you they want you to increase sales, but they don't tell you by how much, that's not a good marketing objective. So we need to say that we need to increase sales by a certain percent, or by a certain dollar amount, or by a certain number of units sold. Otherwise, it's not specific and measurable. Additionally, marketing objectives must be time-oriented. If you thought you had 5 years to increase sales by 5%, and your boss thought you knew that you only had 1 year to increase sales by 5%, you can see where you may disagree on your performance because your marketing objectives were not time-oriented. So let's look at some marketing objectives and see if they meet these three qualifications. First of all, increase sales by 3% by January 1, 2015. Is it measurable? Yes, increasing sales is measurable. We can measure units sold or dollar volume sold. Is it specific? Yes, it says 3%. Is it time-oriented? Yes, a deadline is given. Let's look at the next one. Maintain market share during the upcoming fiscal year. Apparently, you're expecting some new competitors or a change in the economic or technological or social forces, so we feel that simply maintaining market share would be doing good. So, is it measurable? Certainly, market share is measurable. Is it specific? Yes, you want to keep your market share the same. Is it time-oriented? Yes, during the upcoming fiscal year. Let's look at the last one. Increase profits to $500,000 between July 1, 2016 and June 30th, 2017. Is it measurable? Yes, increasing or the amount of profit you have is measurable. Is it specific? Yes, it's $500,000. Is it time-oriented? Yes, it is. One thing I want to point out here is that things like changing your target market, or changing your product, or changing your price, or developing a new advertising campaign, or a new distribution outlet. All of those things are what we would call marketing strategies to achieve our marketing objectives. What I've illustrated here in writing are marketing objectives. Let's talk a little bit more about how we can sell more. We're going to look at a model here which looks at different ways of selling more. One way is to use our existing product. And if we try to sell our existing product in existing markets we call that simply penetrating the market or market penetration. When people say we need to sell more, that's usually what they think about if they don't really understand marketing. Another way of selling more is to take your existing product to a new market. And that could be a new geographic market or a new demographic market, perhaps even a new behavioral or psychographic market. So when we take an existing product to a new market, we call that market development. Another way to sell more is to stay within an existing market, whether that be a geographic market or a demographic market, and come up with a new product for that existing market. We would call that product development. Instead of market development, you're developing a new product. And sometimes we can come up with a new product targeted to a new market, and we call that diversification. Let's look at some examples. When Ford decides that it needs to sell more by trying to sell more of its F-150, an existing product, in America, an existing market, we would call that market penetration. When Ford wants to sell more by selling its Ford Fiesta in a new market in India, we have an existing product in a new market, so we would call that market development. When Ford decides that it wants to sell more by selling more in the United States, an existing market, but they come up with a brand new product like the the C-Max, which was launched in 2013. We now have a new product in the existing American market, so we have what's called product development. When Ford wants to reach this new market of India, but they do so by coming up with a product specifically for that market, like the EcoSport, that's called diversification. So Ford can increase its sales in a variety of ways, by penetrating the market, by developing a new market, by developing a new product, or by diversification. So I hope you can see how selling more is not as easy as always just selling more of an existing product in an